Okay, this is an interview with Jose Barrales on Sunday, May 16th, 2021 by Nick Perkel. Now, Jose, were you involved in any sort of choir or have any private singing lessons or anything when you were growing up?
Growing up, I did not have any sort of I didn't get any sort of teacher or anything like that. But I did. My dad was in a band, and my grandpa was in a band. Completely different. Nothing close to being heavy metal or even close to metal. My grandpa was in a what you call a trio, which is three people that play guitars. A trio, basically, that's what it translates to. That's Spanish. um, and he played and sang like old classic regional Mexican music. And then my dad, he had a band in the '80s that toured around southwestern U.S. and Mexico and a little bit of South America. And he did what are called romanticas, which is translates to romance or romantic music. And in the '80s, it was very popular with a lot of different groups that played that style of music. That's the kind of music I grew up listening to since it was always around, and my dad played music. It wasn't until I want to say I think it was either seventh grade or eighth grade where I didn't choose this, but they put me in chorus class at school, and I wasn't the greatest singer. I still don't think I'm the great singer. I feel like I scream into a mic very well and in different ways. But back then, the teacher or professor of chorus class, they made us sing like the Titanic song or what's that other song they made us sing? Because we did perform in for our school, and it was I think it was the Grease song. I forgot what, the Grease Lightning or something. So they made us sing that stuff. I wasn't like the main person singing. I was in the background doing oohs and ahs. So I'm pretty sure I wasn't the greatest singer. So yeah, I didn't have any like proper training or anything like that.
Now, when you were younger, what was that initial spark that made you want to be a singer?
Well, that's the funny part as well. Like, I never really wanted to be a singer. Like, there was nothing against singing. I wanted to be a guitarist. I begged my dad for a guitar for a long time, and I mean, he obliged. He really liked the idea of me playing instruments. I know a little bit guitar, a little bit of bass, a little bit of drums. But my first initial band, I really wanted to be a guitarist. I was in a lot of punk bands before I even never mind. I take that back. I wasn't in a lot of punk bands. I was in two punk bands before I joined Bonded by Blood, which is like a thrash metal band. But I was the guitarist. And initially, when Bonded first started, I wanted to be the rhythm guitarist. Before I met Alex, when I started looking for guitarist, lead guitarist, I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna be the guitarist. That's what I was like set to do. And then I heard Alex play, and I was like, wow, well, I don't really want to play. It's like he needs someone better to do his like rhythms than I could play at the time. I was playing stuff like the Misfits and Black Flag, so that was nothing close to what he was already playing. He was already playing, Steve Vai stuff and a lot of like Ozzy Osbourne, Randy Rhoads stuff. So he was way ahead of what I was doing, and singing just kind of fell onto me. I was kind of like I was, I guess, sparked by singers like Henry Rollins from Black Flag, like all the attitude of that hardcore punk era from the '80s. That's what really made me want to pick up the mic. Their attitude and they weren't the greatest singers. Like they weren't Dio or anything like that. But they just had that attitude, and that, is the reason I even went into extreme music in general. It was just mostly a lot of that hardcore punk stuff. From that era, from the '80s, that really made me feel like, hey, anybody can do this if they really want to. And obviously, you have to have your own little unique twist to it. But that's what really sparked actually picking up. It fell into, hey, do you want to do the vocals for Bonded because we have no one else? And then I fine tuned it by listening to some of my favorite vocalists, which are one of them being Henry Rollins from Black Flag.
You took some time off from music to take some college courses. What types of skills or knowledge did you acquire to become a better musician from college?
I took some time off due to that. Yeah, even though we toured with Bonded and did like world tours and hit so many countries and whatnot, at the end of the day, I was still kind of jumping around, living from like couch to couch. I wasn't living a luxurious life. I come from a very working class family. I'm a first generation Mexican American. So we never really had money. And my whole idea was like, hey, I need to start doing something because I don't no money's coming in and I need to do something with my life I didn't want to be 35 and that's the age I am now and not being able to I didn't want to live in my friend's couch anymore. So that's what I did. I got a lot of life skills. I actually did nothing with my bachelor's. I got my bachelor's in political science, but I did nothing with that. I tried doing some political science, government stuff, but it just wasn't my thing. So, but it did help me learn a lot about myself. And I think I adapt that and transfer that into music now and what I want to do, which is mostly business stuff. And I think all that life experience that I got during those times with jumping from job to job and really finding who I really wanted to be and who I want to be as a person helped me redefine me as a person musically, exactly what I wanted to do and how I wanted to deal with labels and the business side of things. Because everything I've done with music, I've been really good at doing the business side of it. And I think all that in a way helped me more evolve that side of things. Not necessarily going to college, but just the experiences I had at college, networking with different people, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, how many bands are you a part of right now?
Right now, I'm only part of 2 bands, which is Macrocosm, which is a band that has me, Steven drummer, Juan guitar, and Andrew guitars, and a lot of those, and Jerry bass. A lot of those guys came over to do Agnoxia with me. It was basically, I think, Steven for drums and Juan for guitar. So those guys came over and did Agnoxia with me. But yeah, I'm part of two different bands.
Now, when it came to the sound of Agnoxia, what really shaped your musical taste to form that band?
So initially, for Agnoxia, I wanted it to be a solo project. So while I was waiting for Macrocosm to record the full album, since we did do a demo in 2018 or an EP, and then we were doing well, everything was fine, and we hopped into the studio. When we hopped into the studio in, I want to say late 2019 or mid 2019, while we were going to the studio, the pandemic hit and they closed everything down, and we were waiting it out for a bit, being like, okay, let's wait a few months, let's wait a few blah. Then it turned into what it is now, right? But so we couldn't get to actually record Macrocosm. While I was waiting, I needed to have some creative juices flowing. I was writing songs that did not fit Macrocosm, and in the beginning, I wanted it to be more of a grind band. I wanted to be a grind solo project. So I had, in my mind, I had Terrorizer, Repulsion. That was I'm going to do something like that. And as I was talking to Juan, who is the guitarist for Macrocosm, I kept telling him hey, this is what I want, blah, blah, blah. He wasn't part of the band yet. I was just talking to him, my ideas. We worked together. So he was just kind of picking my brain on what I wanted to do. And he's like, hey man, I can help with this. He started sending me riffs daily, just do, is this something you would like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, thank you for helping me out. I really liked a lot of the stuff, but it wasn't sounding like what I initially thought it was going to sound like. It wasn't sounding like a Terrorizer type of band. It wasn't sounding like a Repulsion type of band. Now it started sounding a little bit different. And as this was coming in, I had the idea of being like, hey, you know what? Maybe I should get some guest musicians in here. And so I needed a drummer, so I talked to the Macrocosm drummer. It was just easy to talk to Steven about it because he's there and he's a good friend of mine. And he's like, yeah, I'll help you out. And so he banged all that out right away. So we had I want to say 4 songs ready to go within a month or so. He came in. They only jammed on them once, him and Juan jammed on them once, and we went to record. So now we had the bass of this band, the bass sound of this band ready to go. And while I was listening to these demo tracks that they recorded, I was like, you know what, it would be a good idea is to get some of these guys, like my old friends from Bonded. That was the first people I actually contacted, and it was hard to get Juan, the original Juan from Bonded, to do stuff. He hadn't played guitar in like a few years. He was a little rusty, so I wanted to make sure that he was part of this, especially on a song with Alex. So I waited a little bit to make sure that he was up to date, and he took all that rust out, and so they came along for the ride. And while I was doing that, I'm like, you know what, maybe every song should have a guest guitarist that I'm really into. And since I had brought Alex and Juan in, I thought it would be a good idea to bring in from that era of like the early 2000s, like new thrash revival era, to come over and jam with like all old friends, just like old times. And so the sound kept evolving as I kept adding all these people. And I'm a person that I'm okay with stuff like that. I trust those guys because they're obviously great musicians, and I know that they're going to come up with something amazing. So as they came in and I gave them the songs for each person, like the songs, even though we have a bass for the music that makes it sound like Agnoxia, every time those guys came in, the lead guys, they made that song sound like a completely different song, but then it still fit into what we're doing with Agnoxia, which is great. And moving forward, I feel like that's what we're going to do, and bring in more people and take some people out and bring in guest vocalists and do like, I have like all of it planned for the actual debut album.
Now, for the EP, like it feels like a who's who of the new wave thrashers. Did you get everyone you wanted for the EP?
No, I got the closest friends I wanted to get. There was other people that I wish could fit into the EP, but it would have been like kind of like overkill, too many lead guys in one song, you know what I mean? I wanted to get guys from like Gamma Bomb, guys from Magic Rich Tool, that whole era of like the new thrash wave. A lot of them are still friends of mine. I wanted to get guys from Witchaven and all these things. The good thing is that the album's coming out. We already have the bass recorded for the album, and I have a lot of guys that once I released the EP, were like, hey man, how come you never hit me up? I would have loved to be on here, blah, blah, blah. So now I have like a whole roster of really cool people that are going to come in that I never thought even wanted to be part of it. So I'm kind of excited for that.
Now, what was the typical way Agnoxia composed a song?
So I had an idea for songs, and I worked a lot with Juan Carlos Alba, not Juan Juarez. He's the guitarist for Macrocosm and Agnoxia. He's one of the main core group guys. So I gave him ideas of what I wanted. Like I would be like, hey man, like I really like this obituary riff, and I really like this terrorizer riff. Do you think you could make something like this? And then we would bounce ideas back and forth. He would record some stuff on his computer, send it over to me. That's the great thing about technology nowadays, man. Like it's easy to send stuff over and just kind of listen to it right away. So that was really cool. So we worked like night and day for like 2-3 weeks on riffs. And once that came to be, we changed little things here and there, but we sent it over to our drummer. Our drummer is the one that was like, okay, and I trust him. He's a really good drummer. So anything that he was going to bring to the table, I knew it was going to be really good. And it was. And then once we were in the studio, he did change some things in the studio, the drum wise. So now we have these core parts of this song. Once this was here, once we had recorded that, they came over to me, and I listened to them over and over and over and over to write lyrics to them, to do this. And I had a whole idea of what I wanted to do with the lyrics and what kind of theme I wanted to go with this band. And I wanted to make sure it didn't sound like Bonded, and it didn't sound like Macrocosm. Like I wanted its own style. The first time I ever do vocals like this as well, and I think it came out pretty cool. So that came to be, and then once I listened to the stuff with vocals on them and everything on there, I was like, okay, this song is good for Balmore. This song is good for Alex and Juan. Like I sent them the lead stuff at the end, but I wanted to make sure that each song fit that particular guest I had in mind.
Now, can you tell me about working again with Alex and Juan for Suffer Existence?
That was really cool. It was. I feel like it was like a little mini reunion of Bonded by Blood. Something that we've talked about for ages. It seems like now. We were going to do something for Exile to Earth's 10-year anniversary. It just didn't come to be, but we talked about being on a song together, and it was really fun. It brought a lot of nostalgic vibes, a lot of nostalgic feels. It was cool to have both of them on the track, and it just felt great. It felt like old times, and it kind of sparked some interest in maybe doing something in the future.
When it comes to bands getting to perform again in a post-COVID landscape, any advice on how to avoid pay-to-play moving forward?
That's a difficult one, because even before pandemic hit, or COVID hit, there's a lot of that going on, especially here in LA. Like, there's nothing but pay-to-play. It's very rare that you get especially for bands that are just starting out. It's very rare that you get a venue that will let you just jump on a show, unless it's like some of those do-it-yourself type of venues. And I'm the type of guy that, even with our Macrocosm, or even back in the Bonded by Blood days, I used to do my own shows. Like, I set up my own shows and try to set up my own fan base and bring up like that whatever scene I was a part of, or whatever bands I felt were great. I just would set up my shows, find like a lot of do-it-yourself venues. Like, those bigger venues are always going to, have big promoters that want you to pay in. That's how they make their money. So it's very difficult for a band that's just starting off to avoid that stuff, especially if you want to play with bands like a bigger name band, I don't know, Testament or whoever. They're going to ask you to, especially in LA, it's a difficult thing. I mean, I would suggest just kind of create your own scene, or create your own friend bands and jam with those guys, and start bringing in, instead of trying to, and I get the appeal of trying to open up for like an Exodus or a Testament, and we did the same when we were starting, like, here and there, like, hey, Exodus is coming, let's play this, let's play that, let's play with them, and we probably did like 2 or 3 pay-to-play shows, but man, I hate those shows. Like, they're the worst. But yeah, my suggestion would be, like, try to create your own little scene, create your own little friend bands where you start getting a following, and then you can create your own shows, try to do your research on some like do-it-yourself venues, or some venues that are local to you that are not as big as like a Whiskey or a bigger venue like that, and just throw your own shows.
When it comes to your music collection, what are your 3 most cherished albums?
This one is going to surprise some people, maybe. I'm not sure. I'll go one by one. The first one that I hold close dear to my heart is Misfits Walk Among Us, and the reason for that is because before I ever listened to that album, I never listened to any sort of extreme music before. Before that, I was listening to whatever was on the radio, or whatever my parents played, which was usually music in Spanish or regional Mexican music. And that's what I grew up listening to and playing as a kid. And I want to say 7th grade showed me the Misfits, and my life changed completely. After that, I wanted to make bands that had more of a, had like distorted amps and crazy lyrics and blah, blah, blah. Like, that changed my whole world. I started dipping into deeper, different types of more extreme music because of them. So that's number 1. I think number 2 would have to be Bad Brains and their debut album, which is self-titled. Just because when I first heard that, I just couldn't believe that people played with so much attitude. I was like, what the hell's going on? Like, this is crazy. And then I started watching VHS videos of them and blah, blah, blah. Like, then when YouTube came along, I started watching YouTube of them, and I'm like, I saw the crowds and all that stuff in New York, and I was just like, I don't know, man. Like, that just appealed to me. Like, the energy that they brought, and just like the music, you can feel it in the music. It was so raw and so like unapologetic. I mean, I loved it. Obviously, nowadays we get more extreme stuff, but to me, that had a great impact. And then it would be probably nowadays Terrorizer, World Downfall, just LA grindcore band. Before I listened to any sort of heavy metal, which is funny because I come from punk. Like, that's my whole, like, I grew up in like middle school and high school listening to like punk, hardcore punk. That was my scene before I went into metal. And I listened to and that took me deep into like crust punk and like these other punks that had more closer ties to, I want to say, like grind and death metal than it did with like Iron Maiden or Dio. I listened to Dio and Iron Maiden like way later in life, which is such a weird thing because I went the other way around. I started listening to like Terrorizer, Repulsion before I even listened to Iron Maiden. So Terrorizer opened up a different world to me, like a heavier punk meets death metal kind of world, and I listened to a lot of that stuff, and it reminds me a lot of like my high school years. So they're my third choice.
Now, what is your favorite urban legend or ghost story from living in California?
Okay, so this one is going to be, since I am like a Mexican American kid, first generation, and I feel like a lot of people here in the Southwest of the United States get this, that are from Latino descent, get this story, and it's called La Llorona, which translates to the Weeping Lady. And as kids, our parents told us this story all the time, saying that if you go out at night, this lady will come out and get you and drown you. Because as the story goes, is that the Spaniards were trying to conquered all of Latin America, whatever it was. There was a lady that married this guy. This guy was cheating on her, and he caught them, and he grabbed her kids and drowned them in the river. And then when she drowned them in the river, they all went to heaven or whatever spiritual world you believe in, but she got stuck in purgatory for doing what she did. And as she does, she preys on children trying to drown them. And so as a kid, I took that to heart, and most of my friends did as well. I grew up in a very Mexican American neighborhood, and everybody there knew that story. So at night when you were younger, you're like, oh my God, you would hear little noises here and there, and we'd be like Llorona's coming, and like it's little things like that. But it's nostalgic, and at the same time, like now thinking about it and like rereading the story, I'm like, this is pretty like cryptic in a way.
Final words.
Check out Agnoxia. We just debuted our EP. I think it was April 9th. We sold out of all our stuff, which is, I appreciate everybody that still supports me in any way or possible. Like, you guys are awesome. Check out Macrocosm. Our EP came out in 2018, but we have a full length coming out soon, I hope. It's being mixed and mastered by Damien from Horrendous, which is a death metal band. The EP sounds, the full album is sounding really cool, so keep an eye out and an ear out for that. And yeah, hopefully we get to live shows soon behind the music, doing some, trying to get us on some tours and do some things like that. So hopefully we get to see everyone that supported us with buying merch and whatnot, and hopefully I get to see you out in the East Coast.
This has been an interview with Jose Barrales on Sunday, May 16th, 2021 by Nick Burkell.